Have you ever seen one of those super realistic wax figures? The ones that look so lifelike that it tricks your brain for a split second? They're definitely not easy to make. You're not just putting together lumps of wax overnight. They're the result of a long process over hundreds of hours, because you need to be precise and the steps are tricky. So, let's talk about how these masterpieces get made. But first, we need to look at where they even came from. You might think Madame Tussauds is the first one to do it, but that's not true. The art of wax figure making goes back thousands of years. We're going back to the ancient Egyptians. Even then, they used wax for religious ceremonies. In fact, they usually created small figures to represent gods or spirits. And then in the Middle Ages, wax was a medium for sculpting religious icons. These early figures weren't just art, it was deeper than that. They had cultural and spiritual meaning behind them. But things started changing in the 18th century Europe. Wax modeling started getting popular as a way to teach anatomy. Now, scientists could use wax models to study the human body without relying on cadavers. These models were very detailed, so it led to the realistic wax figures we see today. Still, we need to give credit to Madame Tussauds, a revolutionary French artist that completely changed this art. She created figures of political leaders, criminals, and celebrities during the late 18th century. Her traveling exhibitions were so popular that they finally led to the world-famous Madame Tussauds museums. And while hers may be the most famous wax museum, it's not the only one. Wax museums around the world showcase figures ranging from historical icons to pop culture legends. And things have changed. Today, wax figure making has aspects of traditional craftsmanship, but modern technology plays a big part too. Yet, the history of it all shines through in each piece. Coming to how these figures are made, we need to look at the base ingredient, wax. Well, wax isn't chosen randomly. There's a good reason for that. Its unique properties make it ideal for creating lifelike sculptures. But what exactly makes it so special? If you've ever touched wax, you know it's easy to shape and mold. So, artists can carve details like wrinkles, pores, and even veins. It's soft when warm but hardens as it cools. This makes it perfect for delicate work. And you might believe wax is fragile, but don't be fooled. High-quality wax mixtures are super resilient. And you can even add beeswax or paraffin to make sure the figures hold their shape for years, even if the temperature changes. Different types of wax bring different pros and cons. Let's take beeswax for example. It's good for its smooth texture and natural sheen, which makes it a favorite for finer details. But if you're doing a large-scale production, you might need to go for paraffin wax instead. It's more affordable. Wax is also forgiving if a figure gets damaged. Let's say a mishap happened and the figure's finger breaks off. The good news is that it can be repaired without remaking the entire sculpture. This makes maintenance way more manageable in the long term. Wax works well with other materials too, so if you need it to stand straight or bond with metal or wood supports, it won't fail you. But there's one reason that might outshine them all: the way wax interacts with light. It really mimics the way human skin looks under light, and that's exactly what gives the figures that creepy lifelike quality. Then you can build on it. Artists add to this translucence by layering paint, making the skin look almost real. So we have our wax. Now let's look at how it becomes a stunning figure of your favorite celebrity. Every wax figure begins with a sitting session. Or if you're making one for historical figures, you'll need to do an intense analysis of whatever photos and videos you can find. During this session, over 200 measurements of the subject are taken, and this includes their exact eye color, skin tone, and hair shade. It's a tiring process. Celebrities have to sit still for hours while artists capture every detail, and that can be anything from your foot size to what tiny moles you have. But sometimes a personal sitting just isn't possible. Then artists dive into archives. They have to look at so many photographs and videos to make sure nothing is missed. All that sitting still pays off though. The more precise the measurements, the more lifelike the final figure. It's like creating a 3D blueprint of the celebrity. Once the measurements are collected, the sculpting begins. And here's where the real fun and hard work begin. Artists first create a full-scale clay model of the figure. Inside, a sturdy metal skeleton provides support. Since the head requires extra detail, it's crafted separately. This phase is where the figure begins to take form. But looking at it now, you know it's far from complete. And that's because the clay model serves only as a prototype. It's to ensure all the proportions are accurate, so they have to take their time. Just the head alone can take weeks to perfect, because you need to capture the look and vibe of the subject. Now, it's time to transform it. A mold is made from the clay sculpture using plaster. For the head, molten wax is poured into the mold and left to cool for about 50 minutes. After the wax hardens, all of the extra material is removed. At the end, we're left with a hollow but detailed wax head. And this step is pretty technical. Because wax shrinks as it cools, every figure is made slightly larger than life, about 2% bigger to be exact. What this does is make sure the final figure is as close to real-life proportions as possible. The devil's in the details, and it's no different for wax figures. The hardened figure isn't ready for display yet. To make sure everything is spot on, artists use specialized tools to refine features like the nose, lips, and ears. Every wrinkle, pore, and dimple is carefully etched into the wax. Acrylic eyes are painted by hand and inserted into the sockets. A little morbid, but cool. And then there are the teeth. These are molded from the original subject and added to complete the face. This step is painstaking. So many details. But it's what makes the figures so uncannily realistic. It might sound impossible to do for you, sculpting a single eyebrow hair or perfecting the curve of a smile, but for these artists, it's all in a day's work. Talking about eyebrow hair, that's the next step. If you've ever been impressed at the hair on a wax figure, here's why. Each strand is inserted by hand. Yep, individually. It's an excruciating process that can take up to 6 weeks. Real human hair is used for the most realistic look. Eyebrows, eyelashes, and facial hair are also added. Once the hair is in place, it's cut, styled, and treated to match the celebrity's signature look. This step makes sure the figure doesn't just resemble the person, it's now their twin. But if it's a twin, it needs to match the celebrity's complexion, right? That brings us to the next important step. Here's the thing, wax alone doesn't look like skin. But that's no problem for these artists. They apply 10 layers of oil-based paint to achieve the perfect tone and texture. Freckles, scars, and even veins are painted on to add depth and realism. The goal is to make the skin translucent, mimicking how light interacts with real human skin. This stage demands not just skill, but also an eye for color and detail. Each brushstroke brings the figure closer to life. If you're a true fan, you're going to notice every detail. And that includes the hands. Let us tell you, creating hands is no less challenging than the face. Sculptors use the same molding, carving, and painting techniques to craft lifelike hands. From veins and knuckles to fingernails, every detail is replicated. Plus, you need to think about the positioning too. It usually reflects the celebrity's personality. So they can pull off a peace sign, a wave, or hold a prop. Speaking of their personality, their dressing needs to match it too. Can you imagine Betty White's wax figure without the iconic pink outfit? Either way, clothing isn't just thrown on a wax figure. Artists go to great lengths to recreate the celebrity's wardrobe. Celebrities usually help with this step too. Many donate their actual outfits. But sometimes that's not an option, so tailors replicate the clothing using authentic materials. From sequins to zippers, Every element is handcrafted to match the original outfit. Accessories like jewelry, glasses, and hats are either sourced or custom made. Even tiny details like the stitching on a jacket are replicated with precision. Every detail matters. Now the wax figure is ready, but it needs to go through the final boss. Yep, before it goes on display, it undergoes a rigorous quality check. Every detail is scrutinized, from the alignment of the eyes to the realism of the skin. Any imperfections are corrected to make sure the figure meets the highest standards. Once approved, the figure is sent to its designated museum location in a specially designed crate. Maintenance teams at the museum make sure the figure stays in pristine condition, with regular touch-ups and cleaning. But with all this effort, you have to wonder, why do we care so much about wax figures? The answer is in their cultural impact. Wax figures let fans get closer to their idols, literally. Whether it's posing with Beyoncé or shaking hands with Barack Obama, the experience feels personal, even if the figures might be lifeless. It's a chance to meet someone you admire, long after they've passed or in ways that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Plus, wax figures are a treat for the history nerds. Wax museums usually feature historical figures, so you can see what they looked like in their prime. This helps make the past feel more real. Seeing a life-size representation of Cleopatra or Albert Einstein helps visitors imagine what they were really like. And how could we forget the entertainment factor? Wax museums are major tourist attractions, drawing millions of visitors each year. The figures aren't just art, they're a business. And with every business, there are many obstacles to face. Creating a wax figure isn't just about skill. Sure, it's a big part of it, but a celebrity's expression is part of what makes them recognizable. Replicating a smile or the subtle arch of an eyebrow requires a lot of attention to detail. Too much exaggeration and the figure looks cartoonish. Too little and it feels lifeless. You need to be perfectly balanced, and not many have that tool. Even Madame Tussauds has some near misses, like how she can't seem to do Kim Kardashian justice. And we've talked about how hair is added one strand at a time, but imagine doing that for figures with long, flowing hairstyles or thick beards. It's not just time-consuming, it's also physically taxing for the artists. Even the best-maintained wax figures degrade over time. Temperature, humidity, and even light exposure can cause discoloration or warping. Museums employ teams to monitor and touch up figures regularly, making sure they always look their best. Plus, you need to be sensitive to other cultures. Some historical or political figures come with controversy. So, artists have to strike a balance between realism and sensitivity, especially when the subject has a complex legacy. Modern technology has made some challenges easier, though. The process still follows many traditional techniques, but technology has added new tools to the wax artist's arsenal. For celebrities who can't sit for hours, 3D scanning provides a detailed digital map of their face and body. This data is used to create molds with unparalleled precision. Similarly, 3D printing can produce parts like hands or props, speeding up the creation process without compromising quality. And gone are the days of manually mixing paints to match a skin tone. Digital color matching devices now give you perfect accuracy, even capturing subtle undertones. What you get at the end are figures that look super real. And hey, no matter how good you are, you can always benefit from a second opinion. There are new AI softwares that can analyze the figure during the sculpting phase to confirm if the proportions align perfectly with the subject. These advancements allow artists to focus on creative details while relying on technology for accuracy. And as technology advances, the art of wax figures will change too. How cool would it be to see a wax figure that talks or moves? It sounds far-fetched, but with robotics and AI, it might not be. Some museums have already experimented with interactive exhibits. These figures respond to visitors, and it makes the experience even more exciting. Plus, VR could take wax figures to the next level. Visitors might get to wear headsets to see a figure come to life. You might even see them acting out a famous scene or delivering a speech. The materials might change too. Wax is the OG, but environmental concerns are growing, and already museums are exploring eco-friendly materials for creating and maintaining figures. Biodegradable wax and sustainable paints are being tested as alternatives to traditional materials. It's fair to say each wax figure is a labor of love. Well, there you have it. Next time you stand beside one, remember the craftsmanship and effort behind it. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be immortalized in wax too. If you found this video interesting and want to know more about how things are made, check out our channel. Until then, thank you for watching.